So Christina, who's giving the presentation today, is one of our knowledge gatherers on the live project. We have a few other people from the project joining as well, and we're all scattered around mostly South Kerry, except for one. Oh no, you're fine. It's not you, Adele. It's our colleague Orla, who's based in Dingle, that I'm referring to. And you're very welcome anyway. We're not exclusive. So yeah, we're mostly based around the Iveragh Peninsula, and Christina, who is presenting today, is mostly a marine biologist and conservation biologist. She mostly specializes in marine mammals, particularly cetaceans, but also has got a bit of experience with seabirds and coastal birds. So she's looking forward to your very complicated questions, as it's not her main area of expertise today, but it is something that she's very interested in. And so she'll just be giving us a little overview of some of the birds that we can see on our shores over the winter. So those ones that visit us for the winter time, or they're here all year round. So Christina, are you happy to start sharing your screen? And
yes, I will do that and share the sound.
Yes. And I don't know if everyone else has this, but oh yeah, no, that's perfect. Let's put full screen.
All good? May I start?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, then hello and welcome everybody to our little beginner's guide on winter shore birds. Excuse me. My name is Christina, as Linda, Lucy already mentioned. I was reading the slide at the same time, sorry. My name is Christina and I will be doing the talk today, and Linda is going to do a walk on Saturday at Iveragh Beach, for those of you who want to join her or who have already signed up. And basically this talk is going to be a fairly short one, just to give an introduction on what we are hoping to see at Iveragh Beach, what has been recorded there already. So I'm not going to mention all the waders and wetland birds there are, because this is just a lunchtime talk, not a whole day event. So there will be just a few mentioned. And yeah, I hope, as I said, you're going to see them then on Saturday. That's the whole idea of this. Now I will start or not. I continue. This is not continuing. Ah, there. Okay. So I will start with the when and where you're going to see the birds and when. I will mention a few projects in relation to wetland birds and wetlands in general. Also, I will go into the know before you go. And yeah, before I'm heading on to the what is what or the who is who, giving you a few birds and explaining explaining them a little bit more. And then I will end with a few resources and where to report them. Now, the season to start wading birds and winter birds is obviously winter. So there's a couple of birds coming from the north down to Ireland. So that can be Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia, Norway. So those winter breeding birds that breed up there in the far north come down during the winter, because the climate here is milder and not everything is covered in snow. So basically the idea is while they can't find food in their breeding grounds anymore, they come down here to stay the winter here, feed here, and then to fly back into their breeding grounds during the summer. So the season would start around September, ends around March. That's when we see all those birds coming to Ireland, and they peak in November to February. I've mentioned the iWebs here because that's how we know what birds we actually see. So there's yearly annual iWebs counts happening. iWebs stands for the Irish Wetland Bird Survey. And they tell us basically what we have here over the winter, and then we can see if there's a decline or increase in population numbers, etc. Some species do not just come here over the winter, but they would stay all year round. So we have a few many oyster catcher, I want to say, cormorants, ringed plover, and curlew, just to name a few. The curlew is a particular important species because they're actually in decline in Ireland. So even if you think, oh my God, there's so many curlews out there now over the winter, so those guys are mainly birds, again, that come from the far north, come down here over the winter, but they will disappear as soon as the summer starts again. In Ireland, we only have a couple of breeding pairs left. So there's a conservation program taking care of them. I'm hoping to rehabilitate the population, which is called the Curlew Conservation Program. And if you want to read more about that, there's a link here on this slide. So this will all be up later on video as well, if you can't take it down right now. So you can, yeah, take it down later. Then the habitats we're looking at around Reenrow Beach, which is where we're going on Saturday, you would have a mix of sandy beaches and rocky beaches. But then you also have grasslands and farmlands surrounding the beach, as well as estuaries and river. So there's the Inny River going into Ballinskellig Bay, which is just the other side of Reenrow Beach, where you're going to go on Saturday. And then there's also lakes and uplands. Ballinskellig Bay in general is an Iveragh site, means there are counts, or sometimes there are counts happening there, just not as often as we like, because due to staffing issues. And it's also an SAC, that means a special area of conservation. And this is by the EU Habitats Directive. Basically, it means there's certain habitats in that bay, 3 in particular, that need to be protected by the EU. And that's why the whole area is a protected site or a special area of conservation. If you want to learn more or want to know where more parts or sites are on Iveragh where you can do bird watching, there is a link there again, but I also have a map here, which you hopefully can see. So we have Cromain in the far north. This is the Iveragh Peninsula, by the way, just in case for those who don't know. Then we have Ross Bay, Ferta Estuary near Carsavine, then the Port McGee Channel, then Reenrow Beach, that's where you're going on Saturday, and Ballinskellig Bay. And also there's Derryman in the south of the peninsula. So a lot of spots where it's really easy to watch those birds over the winter because there's loads there. Now wetlands is it's wetland birds. I think I mentioned that a few times now. So those are the birds that live in wetlands. They use wetlands as their habitat, especially during the winter. So wetlands are of a particular importance to all those birds that come here over the winter. And wetlands are basically identified as habitats that are either seasonally or permanently covered in water or flooded. So that does not just include all the coastal areas, but also, as I mentioned before, farmland and grassland that might just get flooded during the spring and autumn season because of a lot of rain. So all those areas are considered wetlands. They're in decline globally, unfortunately, but they're very important, not just to the birds, but also to us as buffers for floodings, but also as carbon and methane sinks. So if you want to know more about wetlands, because they're so important also for the birds, there's a few links here of the Irish wetlands. Also on the bottom, Echoes, it's called. It's the impact that it's a project about the impact climate change has on birds around the or bird habitats around the Irish Sea. So it's basically more the east of Ireland, but still applies basically to all wetlands. And then there's the CAP project, which is Cooperation Across Borders for Biodiversity, and the Curlew EIP, which is the Curlew European Innovation Partnership. So I had to read that up from my notes here because I'm really bad with abbreviations. But yeah, that's just a couple of links you might want to read up on if you want to learn more about wetlands and their importance to us and how you can help to preserve them as well. Now, before you're going out into the field and look for all those birds, there's a few things you might want to consider. We have a link on our website, Know Before You Go is the webpage. It's what the webpage is called. And there you can find a few guidelines just to keep in mind while you're out and about. One thing I really want to point out in regards to birds is because they're migratory birds, they need a lot of energy to actually migrate, because many of them do not, or have like very low options or few options to eat and feed, forage while they're migrating. So it's really important to them to eat as much as possible while they're here, to build up reserves, to allow them to migrate back into their breeding grounds and then breed successfully, and then hopefully come back the following winter. So that's where it's really important to try not to disturb those birds. So if you're watching them, you want to watch them from far away, and you definitely don't want them to fly off, because that costs them a lot of energy. So one thing to do to avoid them flying away or getting scared or simply stop foraging is to keep your dogs on a leash while you're at the beach. For all the beach goers and dog owners out there, because it has a huge effect on the birds, but many people are probably not aware of that, what it does. So that's why I'm mentioning that here now. What you should do when you're going out is also always dress according to the weather. So check the weather forecast for Saturday if you're heading out. Wear appropriately, wear warm layers and waterproof layers, especially, I would say. We're in Ireland after all. And then you should bring some optics with you. So it can either be a scope, ideally, if you are really getting into it, or binoculars for starters are just fine as well. Again, it gives you the advantage to see birds from further away without actually disturbing them. And then if you have a camera as well, to take pictures, it doesn't have to be a high-end camera. It can be just your mobile phone that you can try to align with your binoculars or your scope, which I'll show you a video of later on as well. It's not really fancy, but it will help you to relook at those images later on today, and maybe to help you to ID them when you're at home, because all the pictures you're going to see here in this presentation will be nice and big, and birds don't move. But when you're actually out there in the field, for those of you who don't have experience with birds, so they do not just fly off, but they just constantly move. If they don't care that you're there, which is good, they will just continue foraging, and they might just not stand still for you to wait for you to ID them. So having a picture or a video of them can be very helpful then also afterwards, to ID them. What I sometimes do as well is I have a little sketchbook with me and a pen, and I just take really big quick sketches of features that are really distinctive, and then I can go through my book later on and see, ah, yeah, that was actually that because it had this and that feature. Talking about books, two that we have here that we recommend, Linda and I, are The Pocket Guide to the Common Birds of Ireland, which is Linda's book. She loves that book. She uses it a lot. I tried to get this book in Killarney, but I couldn't. So I went with the only book that I found there, which is The Birds of Ireland, a field guide. But since it's an association with the Birdwatch Ireland, I thought I can't really go that wrong with it. And I'm happy with it so far. So as I said, both books, really good guides. If you don't want to carry them around with you while you're out in the field, then there's also apps for your phone. One is called Merlin, which is free of charge. And there's another one called Colin's Bird Guide, which there's a small charge that applies. I'm not sure how much it is because I don't have that app. But yeah, two apps that you can choose from. Maybe try the free version first before you're going for the other one, just to see how it works for you when you're out in the field. And they will then help you to ID birds that you're going to see. And now we start with the birds. So I mentioned before, like when I'm out in the field, I'm looking for different features. So it can be very overwhelming, especially if you have like a mixed flock of many different birds and they all look the same, but actually they don't. So basically it helps to break them down. Very often also the light is not really right. So it's really hard to make out colors. And that's when you're looking at shapes of things. So examples are the shape of the beak, the length of the beak, the head shape or the neck length. And then if you can make out colors, one feature is also the colors of the legs. It's mentioned a lot in the books to distinguish birds from each other, or the color of the beak, the tail color, the tail length, and also behavior and habitat. On the bottom, you can see the just a couple of examples of silhouettes of birds that you maybe see on Saturday as well, or that you can see elsewhere around the peninsula. But just to give you an idea, if you can't make out colors even from the shape alone, some look fairly different to each other, some look very similar to each other, but it's like looking at particular parts, bits and pieces on its own. That's how you will be able then to distinguish them from each other. And if you're getting confused in the beginning, I just want to say, stay calm, take one bird at a time, and practice is really all it needs. The more often you see a bird over and over again, the more confident you will get that this bird is actually this particular species. And even if you cannot say the other bird what species it is, you at least will be able to say it's not the bird that you know really well. So just by saying, okay, what it's not, it will still bring you down to what it might be or might not be. So yeah, I think it's called exclusion. So if you exclude a few birds, there's less left that it can be, basically. So first one I'm starting with, our birds here, is the light-bellied brent goose, a very pretty goose, I find. On the silhouette, I have it next to a duck. It's actually a mallard duck. So the left is a goose, or the brent goose, and the right is a duck. And I put them together because it shows you that size-wise, there's not that much difference. The brent geese, they're not as big as farm geese, so they're much smaller, almost the size of a mallard. And on the picture below, you can see they have a black head and a black neck. So there's 3 more species that are very similar to that, with the dark head and the dark neck. But what the brent goose has, or the light-bellied brent goose has is a white wedge on the side of their necks, which you can see on a few of those geese down there on the picture as well. And that's how you know it is a brent goose. There's a light-bellied and also a dark-bellied brent goose. They look all the same except for the color of their bellies. So the bellies here in the picture are pretty light, while if you have a brownish belly, then it would be a dark-bellied brent goose. But they are not as often seen in Ireland as those guys there. So light-bellied brent goose I put here because we have seen them in Ballinskellig Bay. And also, yeah, they're very numerous all over Ireland in general, and easy to ID. So that's a good start. The next one would be then the ducks. There's different ducks. So I'll start with the one that probably everybody knows, which is the mallard duck. To the left, we have a male on the top and a female on the bottom. Females in ducks generally look, to me, they look all the same. I just want to say that, so I'm not even looking at them in detail generally if I can see them together with males. So if I want to ID ducks, I look for the males. If there's a group of ducks and I see half is female, but the males are all the same species, I simply assume that the females are the same species. They are of that brown color simply to camouflage them while they're sitting on the nest, incubating the eggs. And males don't need to do that, so that's why they can look all fleshy and colorful, but that again makes it easier for us to identify them. The mallard duck has a typical green head, a yellow beak, a white ring around the neck, then a dark brown chest, and a kind of black and white, gray patterned rest of the body. And what is really unique to the mallard, even if you can't make out colors, I'll just show you on the slide here before as well, you can see it has like those curled feathers on the top of the tail. So those curled feathers, which you can see on the mallard duck there on the top left as well, that's really unique to mallards, and that's how you will always know that's a mallard. Now, the other 2 duck species I will talk about is the teal and the witchen, which you can see on the right. The top is the teal, the bottom is a witchen. They're smaller duck species, so the teal is the smallest of them, and the witchen is the size between teal and mallard somewhere. Witchen is also one of the duck species that you most frequently, or that you see very numerously here in Ireland over the winter. And yeah, they are both fairly easy to identify once you're getting used to them. So the teal has a dark beak compared to the mallard. Also, to me, it looks a little shorter, so not as long. And they have a brown head with a green eye patch. So it's really the only duck that looks like this. So all you need to do is look at the head, basically. And the same for the Witchen. It also has a brown head. However, it has a light blue beak, and it has a cream colored forehead, like a stripe going up its head. So if you see that, you know for sure it's a Witchen. So you don't need to think about it anymore. It's a Witchen, that's it. So that's two of the ducks. And yeah, Wichens we had seen last time. I have been on Reenrow with Linda as well. So fingers crossed that they will be there on Saturday as well. That's actually really cute and pretty. Then two more species, which still are no waders. So we get to the waders in a little bit, but two more species that I want to mention that you might not see so much at shore, but maybe further off at sea when you're looking out at the bay. They're all black birds. So we have the shag to the left there, and the cormorant and the common scoter. So I mention them because when they're sitting out at sea on the water, they can look all fairly the same because they're all big and they're all black. And so it's like small things you're looking out for when you want to distinguish them from each other. To distinguish common scoter from cormorants and shags, you would look at the size of flocks. Common scoters are often seen in large flocks, and they would also constantly sitting on the water. So scoters are ducks. That means they are waterproof, and they can just sit there all day long without sinking. So they just stay on the water. They feed as well, of course, but they don't have to, so they can just stay and do nothing. So if you see a behavior like that, that would be scoter. Where in contrast, shags and cormorants, while they're sitting on the water, you see them sometimes looking to the left and to the right, and then they go for a dive. So they're constantly diving. If they don't find any fish anymore, nothing to forage where they're sitting on the water, they generally fly off, go elsewhere to fish, or they come back on land. And that's because they are not waterproof. They're only water resistant. So that means over time, their feathers soak up with the water and they need to dry their feathers again. And when they're on land, that's when you can normally see them like sticking out their wings like this, and they're trying to dry they are drying their feathers. And yeah, so that's a typical difference between scoters and shags and cormorants. However, now to tell shags and cormorants apart from each other is a little trickier because, as you can see, they look very similar. I have not given up on them yet, but I'm not at the stage where it just clicked and I'm like, of course, that's a cormorant or a shag, which hopefully all of us will get to at one point in our lives. But yeah, I said, I'm not there yet. So I'm still figuring out the difference between shags and cormorants. Technically, they're different in body size. So the shag is smaller than the cormorant. They have a more slender body, and they have a slimmer beak than the cormorant would have. During the summer, they also, during breeding season, they have a crown of feathers on their forehead, which can stand up like this. So they have like this standing up there. However, during the winter, they don't really have that feature. So that doesn't really help us to look at them right now. And the same for cormorants. They get like really white cheek during the breeding season, which you can see on the picture. And they also have a white patch, which you may be able to make out under the left wing of that bird. A white diamond-shaped patch on their thighs, which you can really see really well when they're actually flying off. However, it's not as distinct in the off-season, which we are in right now. So if you don't have both birds like literally standing next to each other and where you can see the size difference and can compare them, I find it really hard to tell them apart. So I will just generalize them in general and say, okay, it's a shag or cormorant, but maybe some of you are really, really good and will be able to pick them out. There's other features to tell them apart, like the cormorant, for example, has no feathers around their eyes. So they have like a ring of skin basically only around their eyes rather than feathers coming straight out there like the shag has. But that's a feature that you really can only see when you, I don't know, have like the best camera ever, the biggest lens. And yeah, I have never seen it, so because they're usually too far away. But yeah, so I will leave it with that on the blackbirds. That was enough talk there. And I will come to the waders, curlew versus whimperl. That's where I'm going to start. Curlew on the left, whimperl to the right. On the top image, you see, if you only see the silhouettes, there's a size difference, and also the curlew has a longer beak. Both beaks are down curved, but the curlew, I always think it looks like abnormally long, I want to say, compared to the whimperl. So that's how I always remember that it is a curlew. Also, the whimperl has a white stripe over its eye, and also, which you can't really see on the picture, but it has a similar white stripe over its forehead. So ideally, how you want to ID a whimperl is when it's facing you and sticking its head into the sand, so you can nicely see that stripe. But again, that rarely happens. So you just have to look for other features. And one feature you can look out for as well is the sound. So I will try to play that now and hope that's going to work. The curlew has a very distinct sound, which, let me know. So like very high pitched sound, and it goes like do-loop, do-loop. So it kind of goes up and down and like very melodic sound, I want to say, compared to the whimperl. I just give you an example there. Like the whimperl sounds like way more agitated. Let's see if that works. No, sorry. Yeah, sorry, this is a really short one. Just once more. So also very high pitched, but like completely different to the whimperl, to the curlew. This is just two sounds that you might want to listen out to when you're out in the field. They make a couple of more different sounds again, but that's two very typical sounds. That's why we picked them here for this presentation, just to give you an idea on what to listen out for when you're out and about. Oops, sorry. Nope, that was not intended. I meant to go to the next slide. There. Okay, sorry. So now next one is two of the small ones, the Dunlin and the Sanderling. If you look at the silhouettes, they look very similar size-wise. They have both black legs, both black beaks, and the difference in the silhouette would be that the beak of the Dunlin is a tiny bit longer and is a little bit down curved. However, again, those birds, they won't be standing still for you when you're watching them out in the field, and there can be even mixed flocks of them, so it can be really hard to tell them all apart. Now, looking at the coloring here on the pictures, you can see the winter plumage. On the left, the Dunlin is kind of a brownish color, I want to say, while the Sanderling gets like, he has a or they have a really wintry look, I find. So they are like loads of white and light gray on their backs. So yeah, they look like really like winter birds. However, when they're coming to Ireland, they might still be in their summer plumage. And before they're leaving Ireland, they might turn into their summer plumage again. So there might be an overlay between all the plumages. And if I look at the summer plumage of Sanderling here on the right now, you can see they turn brown as well. And if you have like same size brown birds running all over the place, it can get really hard to tell them apart. However, the Dunlin then, if you're lucky and they're in their summer plumage as well, then they will have this really big dark spot on their bellies, which makes them then, again, makes it a little easier to tell them apart. But it's all those little features you're looking out for, which are changing over the whole year. So yeah, it can be tricky at times, or yeah, at times to tell them apart. Another two species that I found really tricky always was the turnstone and the ringed plover. And I believe it's because of the dark and white parts that they have around their heads somehow. So that's where I always mix them up. However, they look really, really different. You can see both of them in the right picture, a very blurry picture. In the foreground, you can see a turnstone in its winter plumage. And in the back, you can see the ringed plover, also in the winter plumage. Now looking at the ringed plover in the summer plumage, you can clearly see a white ring. It's the picture on the bottom right, sorry. You can clearly see a white ring around its neck. You can also see an orange beak with a black tip, which it kind of loses during the winter. So it's more kind of a brownish color, and it also loses that black around the neck a little bit, as you can see on the top picture. So it looks more like brown, whitish bird and not so many black features. Again, not really similar, but yeah, I did confuse them in the past with the turnstone, which is on the top left. You can see the winter bird where it's kind of brownish, white belly as well. Also, both species have yellow-orange legs, doesn't help. But the beak, then again, is always kind of dark on the turnstone, and also it is longer than it would be in the ringed plover. And then in summer, the turnstone looks like the bottom left. So they get like this typical black and white pattern around their head and their necks and their chest. But just to give you an idea, an example of my amazing video skills, this I took through the scope, and there you can see an example of turnstones that are turning seaweed. So it's a very typical behavior for them. And eventually you will see a bird as well. So, so there's at least 3 birds roaming around there, because you can see the seaweed hopping up and down, but there's not much to see about those birds. So they're really busy and they don't really mind to be watched. But I took that through the scope anyway, so it's quite a bit away, but yeah, it gives you an idea on where you also can look for behavior. So if you see seaweed moving around like this, so it's a good idea to keep your eyes there, and then you might be able to see a turnstone, because it is a typical behavior for them to forage in seaweed like that. And now to finish up, I will give you 2 really, really easy ones, and maybe some of you can tell me what they actually are. So the first one is a very black and white bird, which doesn't really change their plumage during the seasons. So it always stays kind of black and white. It can have like a whitish stripe down here at the neck during the winter, but it always has that really bright orange beak and kind of pale legs. Anybody want to have a go and tell me what this bird is? No, everybody's shy.
Can I? Will I go?
Yeah, okay.
It's an oyster catcher.
Yay! Yes, oyster catcher. So very common, and as I said, those guys are here all year round, so you can see them in the summer and in the winter. And very often you can hear them before you can see them. And those guys have a very particular sound that they make, which I'm going to play now. So imagine an oyster catcher flying by. I think this is how it was recorded. Let's see. Yeah, again, very high-pitched sound, but I had a former colleague telling me that it sounds to her like a squeaky toy, and that's something that's stuck in my head, and I can literally see somebody stepping or squeezing a squeaky toy when those guys are flying by. So I don't know if that helps any one of you. It did help me to identify or distinguish the sound of oyster catchers from other birds. But yeah, so very distinct sound that they make. And then we have one last very easy one as well. So we're looking at the dark birds, not all those gulls around there. It's a black curlew, not actually isn't, but it looks like a black curlew very dark bird. It's a vagrant species originally from North Africa. They have established breeding colonies in Spain though, and they do come to Ireland over the winter, and we even have a few of them staying over the summer. However, there's no evidence of them breeding in Ireland yet, but that might happen soon, who knows. Anyway, those guys are coming in bigger and bigger numbers to Ireland every winter, so it's definitely keep an eye out for them. And also it's worthwhile reporting them because they're not that common just yet, so it's always exciting to see those guys. And they are almost black with a purpley greenish shine over their feathers. Some might say they are glossy. So who wants to have a guess?
We have, I think Emily beat everyone in the chat saying they're glossy.
Glossy. Yeah, very good. Yes, exactly. So I put them in here as well because they have been seen this winter in Reenrow. So hopefully they're still there. And you, some of you will see them on Saturday as well. Oh yeah, glossy ibis, there it is. Yes. And to finish it up, just a few more resources for those of you who want to read more about birds. If you go to birdwatchireland.ie, there's like all of the birds there. And we also have a page on our on our website, sorry. We have a page for the World Curlew Day last year. However, the information on curlew doesn't really change. So there's loads of info material there as well. And if you see any birds that you want to report, then you can go to National Biodiversity Data Centre, biodiversityireland.ie. They also have an app that you can download onto your phone where you can report log records in the field. And they record everything, so not just birds, anything that grows and lives and is out there somewhere. And for birds in particular, for the Kerry Peninsula, the Kerry County Kerry and Iveragh Peninsula as well, would be Kerry Birding, which are also on Twitter, Kerry Bird News or @KerryBirdNews. And they're really helpful. Like, let's say if you have seen something, you don't know what it was, but you have a picture, so you can post it and ask other birders to help you to identify that bird. And also they always appreciate some rare sightings, like, okay, glossy ibis is not that rare anymore, but still it's kind of special. Or we had an osprey and at the Inni estuary last this winter as well. For a couple of days or even weeks, there was an osprey around there, which was really exciting. Or there's a spoonbill that has been seen at the in Carrigsaveen at the estuary there. So I said, if you see something exciting, it's always nice to share it so that other people might go out and see them as well. And if you guys really enjoy searching, watching, and counting wetland birds, then you are always welcome to join the iWeb's volunteers. And I just have to link there once more as well for those of you who are interested. And that was the end. I thank everybody to be here today or have been here today. And if you have any questions, I will stop sharing my screen now. And then you can just start shooting, please. No, lots of people here now.
You've got the gallery view turned on. Thanks for that, Christina. That was lovely. You've some nice positive comments and thanks in the chat. Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask? Would you like to chat or put your hand up or unmute? Or will I always have questions. I don't see any others. So Christina, okay, Even has asked one here. Sorry, just before I get in. Even wants to know if shags and cormorants congregate together.
They can be seen together, So like I have seen them together, like especially when they're like places where they come on land to dry their feathers might be scarce. So they don't really come to the beach. They would sit on rocks, or in Ballinskelligs you can see them on whatever that is, a pier or something that's going into the water there. I'm not even sure what it is, but some concrete structure. So you can see them sitting there. And again, it depends yeah, where there's space where they can actually come to land. Also, what I forgot about those guys, if you see something inland, like on rivers and lakes, then it's very likely that it's a cormorant, because shags are coastal, while cormorants can be seen along the coast as well as a little bit further into the country. So they also use like lakes and rivers. Yeah.
Yeah, you see them inland a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anna is asking, because she's unable to come on Saturday, if there are other walks. So there's our website. Are there other groups around locally who do bird walks? Is there anyone on the call who knows? Or who do bird watching days out? Does anyone know, or is that a gap? I don't see anyone jumping. And so there's our website where we'll have future walks.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Yeah. And sorry you can't join us, Anna, but another time. And the walk that we're doing, just to say, on Saturday, it is just the marked trail from Reenrow Beach around the headland, and it is a fantastic place to go bird watching. So it's something that you could do afterwards as well. Christina, the timing. When are the best times? Like, when are these birds going to start leaving again? Those that do leave. I know not all of them do.
Like around, like, I mean, as I said, the highest counts are between November and February. Then it's getting less again, but they should be all gone by March, April. But that's something I should mention as well. Like, if you want to go out and see them, if it's really coastal birds, also check the tide before you're going out. You don't want to go out when it's really low tide, because then they're all out away from you. So, but you don't want to go out at high tide either, because then they're in their roosts and you can't really see them and they're hiding. So it's always like when we do the iWebs counts, we go out 4 hours before high tide, basically. So if you go out 2-3 hours before high tide is probably good, when they're not so far away, but still not already in their hiding mode, I want to say. So you have best chances to see them.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Are there any other questions or comments from anyone? Fiach.
Sanderling or Dunlin? I don't know.
That's a real Fiach question.
Like,
sorry, can I ask a question?
You can,
sure.
Of course.
Yeah, is the walk we're doing on Saturday, is that following the Imlock loop walk? Are you going into the bog? Are you doing?
No. So Linda, I think, is on the call, who'll be leading that walk, but it's between the two beaches. So from the main entrance to Reenrow, where they've put the new concrete walkway down,
Yes.
go along the headland behind where the hotel was, the ruined hotel there, around to the other beach.
Yes.
And from that headland is where it's really good to view birds.
Okay.
Unless, Linda, if you'd like to jump in and correct me, but I think that's...
And what time is the walk? What time is it?
Again, I'm going to need help there. Linda, thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute things. Yeah, so it's the cliff section, off to the right is where we'll be going. And the walk is starting at 11:30 and up until about 1 o'clock. So we'll do a mixture of just talking through a few general pieces, kind of reinforcing what Christina's done there in her really lovely talk. And then hopefully see some birds. And practice our skills and see who's out and about there. But it's the one that goes from where you park at Reenrow, and it follows the cliff walk over to I think it's Tron Sasnock.
Yeah,
Yes,
Tron
yes.
Sasnock, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen a really big selection of birds there anytime I've been, so it's fingers crossed they're aware of the time on Saturday as well in the altar.
Now you asked there if there's any bird groups around or people interested in bird groups. We walk in Ballinskelligs along by the Abbey there, between the Abbey and the castle. And about 6 weeks ago, or maybe 2 months ago, we were talking to a man down there who has been observing the birds there over the years. And he was telling us, because they built that walkway, and constructed 2 little bridges, that some of the birds that were in that area, that were nesting and visiting that area, actually left the area because of that. And that man's name is Patrick McDade, and he lives near Carsavine.
He lives down at the point, I think. The point is, where the ferry goes across to Valentia from Renard.
Yeah, O'Neill's.
He's a volunteer with Birdwatch Ireland, I'm not sure, who takes notes on all kinds of birds, garden birds, inland birds, from Carsavine probably to Bowness, but also along the coast.
That's great that there's those enthusiasts there then recording things, and it's an interesting point and reinforces, I suppose, what Christina said at the beginning about how much of an impact we can have just by watching them, and wanting to watch birds can have a really big impact on them and their behavior. So it's interesting.
The Dunlin and the Sanderling, yes. They break my heart. Yes, but it's and I've spotted all those, the differences between them, and I think I know them for a while, and then I wonder again.
Yeah,
also, the turnstone is wonderful because you see, all of a sudden you will see the seaweed lifting, and that's just marvelous. It's the turnstone, and then the difference again, as you said, looking at their features, the beaks, the colors, and the colors, then they can get muddy or whatever else. Yes,
it's a lovely thing to do, and I think by noticing those small details, certainly I find it helps me appreciate it all so much more. When you're really looking, it gets you really in there. So yeah, they're hopefully it'll be lovely to meet up on Saturday then.
Yes, I've seen those birds like during summer as well, the Dunlin, and not the Dunlin now, the Sanderling. Yes, and the Dunlin, and during the autumn and during the summer. So
okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I thought they would be leaving, but I might be wrong there. Like, I know the ring.
I'm sure you're right.
No. I got just no. Like, I'm not actually the bird person. It's just something I got into this winter. And seabirds, but seabirds are different altogether. So but those waders, they're still tricky, and I only started watching them this autumn basically. So it's all pretty new to me too.
They're fascinating.
Right there that some stay over the summer as well.
There's a question here in the chat then about the curlew, which again, I guess it's not your expertise, Christina, but about whether it's just a coastal bird. And Mary, it's not. It can be seen inland. The inland ones are quite special. If I'm not wrong, I think again, Linda, you might be able to correct me on this one, but we get a lot of curlew visiting Ireland, and they stay at the coast feeding, and they come from the colder places like Christina was mentioning, and they spend the winter here. But if you see them inland and if you see them over the summer, potentially those are breeding birds, and those are in severe decline in Ireland. So our breeding population is not doing very well. So that if you do see them inland and if you see them over the summer months, that's quite special, and it's worth reporting them. So yeah, that's.
Thank you. Last summer there were very few of them, but a few summers ago I would have seen about maybe 20 flying from the strand between the abbey and the castle, just coming to a wet field and feeding there. And years before that, just coming a little bit more inland, maybe up to 20 of them, a lot more. I just saw 8, I think, this early autumn.
Okay.
Yes.
They're probably the migrating ones as well.
I would think they were the migrating ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's in more upland areas that they breed, rather than in the coastal areas. So
it was the sound of the curlew that I was listening to, and I thought that's what I hear sometimes, but that's okay. I haven't seen them. Just the sound I was going to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very distinctive.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Okay. Well, thank you anyway. And sorry I won't get it on Saturday, but that would be nice. Another time.
Next time.
Another time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I'm conscious that we're a little bit over time. We try and keep these kind of short because I know it's some people's lunchtime. Oh, lovely. Yeah. the Chuffs by Sandhills at Ireland Strand. Lovely, in North Kerry. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can get in touch with the project. We're live at ucc.ie with any comments or observations you have. Hopefully we'll see lots of you on Saturday. And thank you so much, Christina, for a lovely presentation, and to all of you, especially those of you who've commented and asked questions. It's lovely to have you here with us. So hopefully we'll see you again soon at more of our lunchtime talks as well. And I know Orla will send out an email afterwards with all of the links that were mentioned, and a recording of the presentation will also be available online for anyone who wants to look back.